This is a sermon from St. Paul's Church, Brookfield, Connecticut, transforming lives through Jesus. For more information, go to www.stpaulsbrookfield.com.
That poor Pharisee in Jesus' parable. We heap such scorn on him. He's the hypocrite. He's the self-righteous churchgoer who looks down his nose at that humble sinner. He's a stock character in our religious narratives. If you've seen the movie Chocolat, you've seen a movie version of Jesus' parable. The role of the Pharisee is played by, I think he was the mayor, who so disapproves of the owner of the confection shop across from the church, who has the audacity to keep her shop open on Sundays. And yet he ends up breaking into a shop in the wee hours of Easter Sunday and is found sated with chocolate asleep in the front shop window on Easter morning. We love to poke fun at this type of proud, pious Pharisee, this hypocrite. And yet, the Pharisee in Jesus' parable got so much right. He practiced his faith in wonderfully concrete ways. He set aside 10% of everything he had, his income, his savings, his household goods, everything he had, and gave it to God. 10%. He kept the commandments. He didn't lie. He was honest in all his doings. He didn't covet his neighbor's riches. He never stole or defrauded anyone. He didn't take God's name in vain, and he certainly never murdered anyone. He was scrupulous in honoring his parents. Quite simply, he was a good man. You would have liked it. But how in contrast we love that humble tax collector who gets on his knees and beats his breast saying, "God be merciful to me, a sinner." He too has become a stock figure in our religious dramas. We think of him as poor and contrite, maybe kind of like Jimmy Stewart as he, at his lowest ebb, contemplating jumping off the bridge in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. We tend to forget that that tax collector is a despicable character. He wasn't virtuous. Tax collectors were rich thieves preying on the common people. The tax collector owned a franchise from the Roman government, giving him control over a certain area out of which he had to extract money and get a certain amount of money to the Roman government. And anything beyond what he was supposed to extract was his. And he was to do it by any means possible, which meant soldiers and strong men. And he preyed on the weak and the vulnerable, particularly. The system encouraged graft. It was an oppressive system preying particularly on the poor. There were good reasons that tax collectors were despised. They were considered treasonous representatives of the Roman government. So imagine, if you will, a Ukrainian businessman who is in charge of taxation as part of the district of one of those occupied territories of Ukraine, getting money by military force to support the occupying Russian government. That's what the tax collector was. Not a good or virtuous man. There's very little to like about him. And yet that tax collector in Jesus' parable is the one who got the one thing right. That rich thief fell on his knees in the temple, looking down, beating his breast, and praying only, "God be merciful to me, a sinner." The one thing the no good tax collector had going for him was that he knew he was no good. He had absolutely no claim on God's mercy because he'd done everything wrong. And he'd done absolutely nothing to deserve that mercy. He knew the one thing that the Pharisee forgot. The Pharisee also had no claim on God's mercy. Despite all the good things he did, all his virtue, all his faithfulness, he no more deserved God's mercy than that no good tax collector. In our readings today, it seems kind of odd to me that the second letter of Timothy is paired with this parable of the tax collector. Because doesn't Paul sound kind of like that Pharisee? As he totes all the good things he's done. He has fought the good fight, given everything he has for the sake of God's mission. He recounts the supposedly faithful Christians who have deserted him. Paul fully expects to be given a reward, a heavenly reward, after all his sacrifices. And don't forget that Paul himself was a Pharisee. But, thank God, there are a couple of key differences. The Pharisee in Jesus' parable stood in comfort in God's temple. Where was Jesus? Where was Paul, He was rotting in jail. He wrote from prison. The Pharisee heaped scorn on those less righteous than himself, thieves, rogues, adulterers, and tax collectors, like that one he spied kneeling in that same holy temple. And while Paul acknowledged that many had deserted him, he prayed for them, that it would not be counted against them. And most of all, Paul trusted not in himself, but entrusted himself in all circumstances, in life, in ministry, and in death, to God's mercy. So, we still have in Jesus' parable the surprising picture of this virtuous man, the Pharisee, proudly walking away from God's holy temple, unjustified, not made right with the living God, not forgiven. While in contrast, this rogue, this wealthy thief and traitor, this tax collector, hanging his head as he walked out of the temple, justified and made right in relationship with the living God. It hardly makes sense, does it? The key to understanding the parable, and the key, I think, to put it in context in our own lives, is balance. Balance. Balancing our lives fully on God's love and mercy. Is it wrong to acknowledge and remember the good things we have done and do to honor God and to live faithfully? According to Jesus in this parable, it's wrong to acknowledge our virtues as if they were the reason that God would love us, or the reason we have God's forgiveness and mercy. No. We no less than that rotten, no-good tax collector are the recipients of God's love and mercy and forgiveness simply because God freely offers his love and forgiveness and mercy. Not just to us, but to everyone. Everyone. Our virtues, should we choose to recount them, insufficient as they are the result of God's love and mercy working in our lives, and not the cause of them. We shouldn't ever put that cart in front of the horse. What about comparing ourselves to others, as the Pharisee does in the parable? That's something else he gets wrong. He thanks God that he's better than other people, better than those thieves and rogues and adulterers, or worst of all, that tax collector over there. Have you ever done that? Have you ever compared yourself favorably or unfavorably to others? I think we do it all the time. I wish I looked like that person. Boy, I'm sure smarter than he is. What an idiot to believe that political doctrine. Sure, we all do that. It's part of our basic insecurity, isn't it? We want to hold ourselves up as better than someone else or some other group, and often at the same time, we wish we were richer or smarter or stronger or more beautiful and the like. Here again, I think the key in our Christian life is balance. Balancing our lives and balancing our insecurities on God's love and mercy and forgiveness for all. I think we need to learn to compare ourselves less to others and more to Jesus. And once we realize how much we still have to learn in comparison with Jesus, we can move forward in the attitude of humility. Humility goes even further. It's the true acceptance and tolerance of the weaknesses of others. True humility accepts another person's weaknesses as much as our own. The wisdom today in our reading of Jesus, son of Sirach, also known as Ecclesiasticus, from today's first scripture reading, teaches us about balancing our lives on God's mercy. Sirach is talking specifically about tithes and offerings, but he could just as well be speaking about all we do and offer in our lives when he writes, "Give to the Most High as he has given to you and as generously as you can afford." Everything we are, everything we have, comes to us as a gift from on high. What we have to give back to God in our lives, not just our tithes and offerings, but our behavior. What we have to give back to God in our lives belongs to God in the first place. So be generous. A few verses earlier in chapter 35, verse 6, at the beginning of this section, Sirach admonishes us not to appear before the Lord empty-handed. So we really need to give God back what he gives to us, and not just come empty-handed. And then a few verses beyond today's reading, in chapter 35, verses 20 to 21, he writes, "The one whose service is pleasing to the Lord will be accepted, and that person's prayer will reach to the cloud," which kind of speaks to the virtuous Pharisee. But then he goes on, "The prayer of the humble pierces the cloud." He's even stronger. The prayer of the humble pierces the cloud, and it will not rest until it reaches its goal. It will not desist until the Most High responds. Our service to the Lord will please him if it's done in his love. And it will be acceptable when in humility we recognize that, like all persons, we depend utterly on God's love and mercy, and that we are no more or less deserving of that love and mercy than they are. Then our prayers will penetrate to the heavens, and we'll walk away from this church justified and forgiven. It's a question of balancing our lives. All we do, all we are, all we have, all we give, and all we pray on God's love and forgiveness and mercy.